Is it permanent?
It is permanent, and that's actually connected with the finality of the prophethood. You know, these laws were kept changing. The law of Moses was something else. The law of Muhammad is somewhat different. But when humanity reached its puberty regarding this intellect, then the final prophet came, and this is for all time to come. This is final, permanent, and till the end of this world. Now, Sharia actually is derived from the Jali Wahi, from Quran, as well as from the Sunnah, not Hadith. Sunnah is the practice of the Prophet, and we have two sources of Sunnah. One is the continuity of the practice of the Muslims. The companions saw the Prophet and followed him, and then the Tabi'een saw the companions and followed them. So this continuity is coming. This is one source, a bigger source of Sunnah. And the other is Hadith. So these are the two permanent sources of Islamic law, Sharia, Quran and Sunnah. But then there was ijtihad. Actually, I have to talk about this subject when I talk tomorrow about the political structure of Islam. So this ijtihad, that is in changing conditions. When we have new problems, then we have to make ijtihad, keeping ourselves within the parameters of Quran and Sunnah. But we have to frame further laws. So Sharia now has this third element also. And that is why we have Hanafi school and Shafi school, because they have their own judgments and ijtihad. And now Quran and Sunnah and ijtihad, they go to make one Sharia.
I have a question. In fact, maybe I have misunderstood about the case of Talim Asma. Now, this Talim Asma is the name of the things which is on earth, or the names of the God? For us to understand God, to know God, because the basic thing that we have been sent to this world is to know God, to have knowledge of God. So to my knowledge, I knew that Allama Asma here means the names of God, rather than being the names of the things on earth.
Yes, brother, actually when I was talking about that, I said that there are more than one explanations of this. So one is which you are presenting. The other is that the asma and names of the prophets to come. That man has something good in him also, although he will make fasad and there will be bloodshed through these human beings. But you can see there will be Moses, there will be Jesus, there will be Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is another opinion. But my opinion is the one which I have presented. This is the knowledge of the material world. We know something and name it.
Okay. Is the knowledge of material world different than the asma of God, or attributes of God? When we think, because God, in fact, creates things, and then we know the things.
No, this universe is,
because this is connected with the evolution as well.
Is the shadow of only one name, and that is Khaliq, Al-Mubdi', Al-Badi', that's all. But this universe has so many things that we have to know them, and we have to name them. Every science has its own terminology. Unless you know that terminology, you can't understand the science. So I think this terminology and names of things.
First, I'd like to also thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to follow Ibrahim's question and your answer to Ibrahim's question, which I think fits into some of the things that you said. If the collective we in this world, if we are going the wrong way, to use collective language, which has been emphasized here, if God is not going to and does not intend to intervene, if indeed, as you also said, We only have, again, to use a colloquial language, voices in the wilderness who are advising us the other way, and we therefore cannot be, at this point, optimistic that the civilization's going the wrong way is going to change. Then how can we expect the kingdom of God on earth to come about?
When I said God doesn't intervene, I meant from beginning. The beginning has to be from human beings. They have to struggle. God has intervened by sending His prophets, His books, His guidance. That is also intervention. Now it is for the human beings to follow them and to strive to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, the divine kingdom, the Islamic State. And that is our job. But when we are doing that, Allah will help us. God will help us. So that help will come. But without our own effort and endeavor, it is not going to come. He will not do it for us. We have to start, but then the help will come.
But let me just press a little more, if I may. Again, how can we be optimistic given the present condition of the world that you described? How can we be optimistic that in the human struggle things are going to change? And if I go to the Islamic belief that the final prophet has come, well, then how can we be optimistic that we're going to have other prophets who are going to come to help us? We can't even expect that.
Yes, no new prophet is to come. But we have a concept in Islam of mujaddids, the revivers. And the Prophet said in every century, Allah will send people who will revive Islam and the basic thoughts of Islam and basic teachings of Islam. These are called mujaddids. And they have been coming in every century. So mujaddids will come, and then the divine help will come. And secondly, although we believe that no new prophet is going to come, but Jesus is to come. He has to come again. We believe, just like the Christian brothers, the second coming of Jesus. And through Him actually, this is going to be a global kingdom of heaven on earth. But it will start from among Muslims. At a critical juncture, when the Antichrist appears, we call him Dajjal, then Christ will come Himself. He will descend. This is our belief.
So that means that the human agency would be futile somewhat.
Not futile,
Because
but they will be crowned by something for help, and this will be another help.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, in Arabia, these are the prophecies of the Prophet. An Islamic State will be established. And before that, an Islamic state will be established somewhere in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Because the prophecy says that the armies will come from some eastern country to establish the rule of Mahdi. يَخْرُجُ نَاسٌ مِنَ الْمَشْرِقِ يُعْتِعُونَ لِلْمَهْدِي يعني سُلْطَانَهُ. So this is going to be a human effort first of all, and then Allah will help. Mahdi will be the last mujaddid, and mujaddids have been coming.
I have another question, which is of a general nature about the type of discourse that you have presented, which is not, of course, novel in Islamic theology. Since Muslims have been discussing that since the Tadween age in the 2nd, 3rd centuries of Hijrah, especially with the Ash'arite philosophy that you have presented so well today. But there have been other types of philosophy within Islam, such as the Mu'tazilite philosophy, or perhaps Sufi philosophy and theology, and so on and so forth. And this is a historical fact, which I'm not going to dwell on very much. But what I'm concerned about is the type of education that we have in South Asia nowadays, the type of Islamic education that has been commonly referred to as madrasa system. And the madrasa system is based primarily, perhaps, on the type of theological discourse that you have presented. But the madrasa system in South Asia especially in the modern era, in the 20th century, 21st century, seems to be totally cut off from the concerns of contemporary Muslims. Although there's that balance in a normative way between the physical and the spiritual that you have talked about. But if we discuss the madrasa system in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Kashmir, in Afghanistan, madrasa graduates do not seem to understand the modern world at all. They don't even seem to understand such basic Islamic issues as social justice, as an example.
Yes.
Since they have no knowledge of the major problems of capitalism and the capitalist civilization which has become global. And therefore the question is, if we believe that the normative discourse that you have presented is the correct discourse, but in actuality it is cut off from life, it is alienated from life, then the question is, how can we establish bridges between this discourse and the contemporary needs of the Muslim world?
Actually, this madrasa system was devised to produce legal experts of Islam and the magistrates and judges on the Muslim governments. It has some relation with hadith, but mainly it is fiqh. So actually, we should say this is out of the context, it's gone away. Now we are producing only Maulvis who can lead prayers in the mosques, who can give you fatwa about very small things, that's all. Because when Islam or Muslims degenerated, Islam didn't remain a deen, it became a mazhab. Now if the Britishers were ruling over here, that law was the British law, civil code, penal code, and so forth. What was the job of the Muslim ulama? Leading prayers and teaching people how to say prayer and how to keep fast, and that's all. And this part of our society has become accustomed to this part of deen only, and that is mazhab, and not Islam. And they are not very much concerned with Quran. So we have to bring about and establish an educational system based primarily on Quran.
So you're saying that the ulama in, let's say, Pakistani society are not concerned about the Quran?
I think that is not included in their courses. Very small part of Quran is included in their courses. They are more concerned with hadith and fiqh.
I think that there is a larger question about the status of the ulama in contemporary Muslim societies, specifically in South Asia. And from what you're saying, that the ulama are facing a major crisis.
Actually,
in
what
terms of
happened,
their own Islamic
when the
ideas.
Britishers came to India, now because a civilization, a military power with a scientific background, so we were so much obsessed with it that the ulama, they decided to go to the corners. They thought we can't, have a confrontation with this civilization as this knowledge. So they can take them to corners so that at least name of Allah, name of Muhammad, and name of Islam can be preserved. And that is why, in India and Pakistan, Islam, at least as a religion, is very forceful. Not as a deen, not as a system, social system of life, and just social order, no.
So are we saying that the modern Muslim states that have come after colonialism have failed in retraining Muslim ulama in an Islamic way?
Yes, definitely, I agree. Because actually, after the end of colonialism, so to say, it has not ended up till now, but so to say, the end of colonialism, the people who came to helm of affairs, at the helm of affairs, rulers, they were all trained by our colonial masters. They were brainwashed. They were they had accepted the Western civilization. And they are ruling. So actually, the colonial rulers are ruling till today by proxy.
But we have an example of Iran where the ulama are in power.
Yes.
If we look at the Muslim scene in the contemporary.
That's the only exception. And that was actually a political movement was hijacked by the ulama.
So the Shias are better than us.
They have proved that they have more power and endurance and the spirit of sacrifice. And you know, this tragedy of Karbala has persisted in their hearts. So this, to lay down, the virtue of laying down your life, it is within their bones.
What I do see here is a very altruistic underlying theme of the emancipation of the whole mankind as a part of the evolution or the development through the development of the individuals. And I'm trying to relate this to a pluralistic setting. And I'm wondering that how would we conceptualize or envisage such a process taking place? Would it be only through the acceptance of this, or would it be through a process of bringing the various thoughts together and somewhere emphasize and find a paradigm which really moves the humanity forward, the totality of humanity forward? And in that process, I see that the role of change and acceptance of change will be a decisive factor. Now, how do we relate this entire concept in its more global setting and possibly the global future? Because I mean, if you look at the demographics, I think there is a considerable amount of problem inherent in the whole kingdom of God emerging.
Yes, Brother Nidmal, truth is one, and the true deen is one, and we have to propagate it. But for that purpose, we have to emphasize not the dogma or the creed, but the system of social justice, which is the need of all humanity. For 300 years or 400 years, humanity is in search of some just social order. From kingship, and you know, these lords and barons and etc., there was French Revolution. But it culminated into capitalism. So there was another revolution, Bolshevik Revolution. It has failed because it was not divine guided, the straight path. You know, in reaction you go to other extreme. So that was extremist. So now again we are back to capitalism and liberalism and secularism and so on. But there will be another step in which humanity will go. But for that purpose, at least in some one sizable country on the globe, we must establish that socio-politico-economic order of Islam, so that people can see with their own eyes, this is Islam. What we have been fighting against was something else. This is Islam. So that is the answer to all the questions humanity is facing today. And that is why now America, when they say we are not against Islam, they are saying true. They accept Islam as a mazhab, as a religion. And it comprises of three parts. Some creed, a dogma, beliefs, some forms of worship, some social customs, what to do with the dead body and how to solemnize the marriage and how to celebrate the birth of a new baby, etc., etc. You can have any belief. You can come to America, buy a synagogue, turn it into a mosque. You can come to America, buy a church and turn it into a synagogue. We have no objection. We are ready to embrace you, but not the political socio-economic system. That is ours. It will remain ours. We don't accept any divine revelation or divine guidance regarding these things. Now, what was the point of difference between the USSR and the Western world? For half a century there was going Cold War, but what for? The political socio-economic system. Otherwise, the Russians and all these countries, Eastern European, they were also Christians. And Western Europe and America was also Christian. There was no fight of creed or something else. It was the system. So whosoever is gaining by this capitalistic system, he has to protect that system anyhow. And he will have to go to any extent to guard their interests in this world. And they fear Islam only as a political socio-economic system, not as a razam, not as a religion. They can keep all the religions at par in America, yes. You can make a Gurdwara, you can build there, go there. Hindus can build temples and go there. Whatever you do. But nothing doing. Our secular, liberal, and then our capitalistic system.
Can I just come back to this chart for a moment and perhaps pick up on something which we have touched on, and that is there are many texts in the world, many texts, many books in the world which people claim to be infallible. You know, conservative evangelicals such as George Bush and others would talk about the Bible in those sorts of ways. Certain Jews would talk about the Torah in those sorts of ways, the Bhagavad Gita, Tripitaka, and so you can go on. Can you just clarify, how do you know which is the book which is protected and immune from error and satanic influence? How do you know which book has that status?
That has to be a historical research. Quran throughout 14 centuries has remained as it was. Bible has not. There were revisions, changes. You know, Ahmad Didat, you know, he had this subject, specialized in that subject. Regarding Torah, the Jews also believe that the real Torah is no more there. It was destroyed or buried in the tunnels under that Temple of Solomon in the year 587, when Nebuchadnezzar had invaded and demolished that temple. So I can say this thing about my Torah and Injil only. Regarding the scriptures of the Indians, they are not sure who are the authors of the Upanishads, who were the authors of the Veds. They are prehistoric type of things. But Quran, you know, is in the light of history, full light of history.
One other question about this chart, and that is, do you have any sympathy? There are some in Europe who argue that the rise of science, rise of scientific learning, needed to emerge from a theistic and religious framework, because of course it's the assumption of faith that the world is ordered, which makes it possible for people to investigate it. So do you have any sympathy that actually you need religion to create the possibility of science?
I think this hypothesis is historically wrong. You know, the days of the Muslim, the Abbasids, they had the background of Islam and science, mathematics, you know, all these things, medicine, they flourished. We got those things from Greek sources and from Indians, developed them, and we had the background of belief in God and religion. And we transferred it to Europe through the universities of Cordova and Granada and Toledo. But because, you know, the rule of Pope in those days in Europe, which had prohibited science and philosophy both, that had created an anti-religious sentiment among the masses. So when science started developing, it had that anti-religious color in it. That is the real cause.
At superficial level, there seems to be a contradiction between science and religion. But I think what you were saying was that there is a continuity. The fundamental, foundational, philosophical assumption of science is that life in universe has an order. And this is a religious truth. So science built on that metaphysical idea and tried to find out the nature of order in the universe. So all the developments in philosophy of science, particularly in physics, and I think Dr. Abdul Salam had this notion, and he was hammering it again and again, that whatever developments in modern physics are taking place, they are fundamentally derived from the notion of order that we inherited from religion. So that was probably,
Yes,
is that true?
that's exactly right, yeah.
So in that sense, there is no inherent contradiction between science and religion. But I want to go back to...
But I never said
Sure.
there is contradiction. These are two things side by side. I never said there is contradiction.
There's a difference between saying side by side and saying that
Yes, same.
it's built on that. There is a continuity. There is a qualitative linkage between the two.
No, but only one truth, that there is order in this universe, doesn't go to make it religion. The belief in one God, creator, that is the basis of it. And he is the guider to the right path.
That's why modern physics is going to the idea of trying to find a unified principle in the universe. Anyway, I want to go back to this whole, to the chart. That is the framework which is very lucidly articulated, and I really compliment you on that. My question is, you divide the human knowledge, what you call religious truth, into two categories: protected, which is immune from human error, that you describe as revelation, prophetic knowledge that we receive from the prophets. And the other is the knowledge that we gain from intuition, dreams, illuminations, and
ESP.
and also going to the right side of this chart, from knowledge from reason. My question is it possible to come up with a set of ideas independent from guidance from revelation that is capable of guiding us to the truth? Is it possible to reach the truth by sheer human reason? One. Secondly, is it also, when we say that the whole idea is to find the religious truth, is it possible to find this truth through several paths? For example, the whole idea of interfaith religious dialogue that is taking place in the West is that the fundamental religious reality is the same. And there are different paths, methods to find that truth. I'm not saying that it will not be subject to error, but I just want you to entertain the possibility, just the possibility,
Of
that there are certain other ways to find the truth, independent of prophetic guidance.
actually, to know God, there are so many ways and paths. But to know the path, straight path, that is by revelation only. And this revelation has been coming time to time. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى. And according to the mental or intellectual development of humanity as a whole, there was a development in that also, till it reached its zenith in the person of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we have to accept for the right path this revelation which has been given by Allah for the humanity, whole of humanity, for all time to come. As you know, that Quran says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا كَافَّةً لِلنَّاسِ بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا. He is the only prophet who claimed that I have been sent for the whole of humanity. Even Jesus said, I have come to find the search of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And Quran says, all prophets came for their own nations only. Ila adina khahum huda wa ila madiyana khahum salihah, etc., etc. He is the only one who says, I have been sent for the whole of humanity.
So you do not that I can live a moral life on the basis of secular ethics?
Yes, you can live, it will be basic human morality. Basic human morality, to speak the truth, not to deceive anyone, not to rob, not to steal. These are things which Quran says, they have been imbued in human nature. Alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha. This thus, it has been imbued with this. But the path, straight path, what to do, what not to do, that is something else. That comes from the prophethood.
What would you say is the hope for us Christians and Jews in your view of the future?
The final shape of humanity is going to be Islam. When Jesus Christ comes, he will say, I was not crucified. This crucifixion is a fiction. And I had told you that the law of Moses will remain. So Christianity and Islam, they will merge together into one religion under the leadership of Jesus. Because according to the Quranic philosophy, whenever a messenger was sent to any community, if that community as a whole rejected him, it was annihilated. This happened to the people of Noah. This happened to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And this happened to the people of Ad. They are not mentioned in Bible, but in Quran. They were ancient Arabian nations. Samud, to the people of Shoaib. Then, Pharaoh and his armies were drowned because they didn't accept Moses as their prophet. Jesus came as the messenger for Jews. And Jews as a whole didn't accept him.
But Judaism does contain the idea of the Messiah is Judaic. So Judaism, in a theological sense, does not deny the phenomenon of the Messiah. And throughout history, and I'm talking about modern history, there have been a number of messiahs who have claimed that position. And one major one in the Ottoman Empire in the 17th century was, I forget his name now, Shabbatai ben Tzvi. Shabbatai ben Tzvi in the 17th century claimed that he was the Messiah on the basis of Jewish foundational ideas. So I don't see your point, because in Judaism the idea of the Messiah is not absent at all.
No, it is there.
It is still there.
But that Messiah come to them. They didn't accept him.
Jesus.
So yes, Jesus, that was the Messiah. And he said, he claimed, I am the Messiah.
Right.
But they didn't accept. So the seat is vacant up till now. So they are waiting for their Messiah. And someone will stand up to someday and claim to be Messiah and lead them to, the greater Israel and so on and so forth. Anyone can come. And that will be Antichrist.
I think also we are too far away from the basic subject. Now you said that we have two forms of knowledge.
We have
Two forms of knowledge,
Yes.
okay? But what about the source of knowledge for Islam? I mean, what sources that Islam accepts that true knowledge comes to us?
both knowledges are true.
No, I mean,
This is the knowledge of this universe. And universe is the creation of God.
so is one
And
source.
that is why all the physical phenomena are referred to in Quran, ayat of Allah. They are the signs of Allah.
Yeah.
So actually, Quran to us is the word of God. And this universe is the work of God. And there is no contradiction between the two.
So they are same
Yes.
in one sense. One is coming from Kalam, the other one is coming from...
Because I said, Allah wa Adamul Asma'atullah from God. So this all is a scientific advancement is from God.
Okay, we are now again to the subject. Thank you.